So let's crack on to the talk for today. It's a great pleasure. It's a very timely topic, and Helen Tandy, who is about to talk to us, is a great expert on. She's actually, one of her roles is as a carbon literacy trainer. I don't know what a carbon literacy trainer is, but I can sort of interpret the words, and I'm sure she's going to tell us. Helen is a local resident. She lives in Chester. She's the director and founder of an outfit called Eco Communities. And they have a website, and I commend it to you. If you go and look on the Eco Communities website, you'll be as impressed as I was at the range of projects they've got going on in an attempt to make Chester and the wider world a greener and more sustainable place than it used to be. So she's going to talk to counting your carbon footprint. What I asked her to do was to sort of tell us not what nations need to do necessarily, but what we as individuals might in practice be able to do to reduce the world's carbon footprint. So over to you, Helen.
Thank you. Let's turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. So taking some of my steam away from my presentation, well, that's absolutely fine. This is me. It slightly goes off the screen, actually, which is great. My background is in financial services, actually, and I've been involved. We created Eco Communities 2019. I've worked in financial services for over 30 years. In fact, you will tell that I am not from Chester. I am living in Chester because the business I work for brought me, I applied for a job in Chester, 20-odd plus years ago. So I've been in financial services. It's over 30 years. I'm not telling you how long it's been because I realised the other day that I'm the only advisor in our business that remembers the last time inflation was double digits. So it's been a lot longer than 30 years, actually. My son is 25 years old, and actually it was when I had him that I decided I needed to do more about the environment. And I've been campaigning for 25 years and still feel like not a lot's changed. So I've been an environmental campaigner. I was part of Friends of the Earth in Chester. We won lots of awards while I was part of that group. And I think really what I've put there is that saving the earth starts with you, as in we can't just assume somebody else is going to do it. But I did actually put a bit more research in this presentation today. So Eco Communities, there's Christian and I. That was at one of the climate change campaigns that the students were doing on the Friday, well before COVID. And Christian and I are the two that set up Eco Communities. That's a few years ago. And what we said when we created Eco Communities, we really wanted to help people build a greener and more sustainable future. And that was really the strapline we created at that point when we registered the organisation and what we now try and do within the community. A lot of it is in Chester because that's where we all live, but we do go further afield. So we were created in 2019. We've now got a database of well over 2,000 people, and we reached around about 4,000 people in lockdown. So we don't have a membership as you do here, but what I was very quick to do in lockdown. So in lockdown, I was shielding. I didn't live at home with my husband and son, which is quite nice, actually, for 6 months. And therefore, I had a lot of time on my hands. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, what do I do with all this time? And I very quickly got out there and did online talks. And because I was quite quick to it, it meant that nobody else had grabbed all those fantastic speakers out there. And I managed to get some really, really great speakers on board. And we managed to link up with about 4,000 people over lockdown by doing talks. We had to rethink what we did at that point, especially me, because I wasn't supposed to go out. And since then, we've got a really great database of talks online. We probably will get back to doing those talks at some point. We used to do something called Tellers TV on a Tuesday evening and get people to come along to that as well. Obviously, as people came out of lockdown, the last people wanted to do on a Tuesday evening was stay in. They wanted to go out. So we sort of stopped doing those talks over the summer months. They may well come back, who knows. We also create magazines. My son did journalism at Salford Uni, and he sort of helped me set loads of stuff up. Plus, he has a real job now. Like, you know, I have a real job, and Eco Communities is something I do in my spare time. But he actually wants to go out in his spare time and not spend it doing Eco Communities. So Helen and I, the two sort of main directors now, in fact, I didn't bring it up, my prop, got to the stage where we'd already committed to doing a magazine and a print version earlier this year, and I was scrabbling around trying to work out how to create a newspaper. So this is our second edition of our telemagazine. There's please take one at the back. I think, you know, I got a bit of pushback from the council because councillors, a range of different parties' councillors, help us fund this. We just go out to members' budget and get some money. There's no adverts in it, which is great, so no messing about. And then people write for it. And they pushed back a little bit at the beginning of the council, and what I sort of said was, you can't put everything just online. It's not going to get out to everybody. And this goes out to all the libraries in Cheshire West. So you'll be able to go to any library in Cheshire West, you'll find one of those in there, hopefully. Lots of different cafes. So please take one and see what you think about it. And if you're a budding writer out there and want to write something that fits into the remit of sustainability, we would love to get some more articles. Then Helen and I don't have to write everything that's in it, but there's some great stuff in there. And we do have a previous version as well, which is online. So what are we? We're a little bit of everything. Helen, very confusing because we're both called Helen. So Helen C said to me the other day, Helen, please do not do any more projects. If somebody comes to you, the council quite normally, and asks you to get involved in something, please don't say yes. And the one that isn't on there, actually, I've just noticed, is the food project that we got involved with the council recently. So the council's trying to go for a sustainable food city in Chester, and they've linked into us to try and help them do the businesses side of it. So we do quite a lot. So we were the group that did Plastic Free Chester years ago. I'm working with Neston, Tatton Hall, Ellesmere Port to help them at the moment. And we're doing Plastic Free Cheshire. So we're working on Plastic Free Cheshire. It was great to see lots of reusable cups. I know that's probably just about washing up, but it's also quite good as well. Take it home. We're also part of we do Sustainable Cheshire, which is us, and Carbon Footprint Friends, which is the thing I'm going to talk to you about. So the name that we came up with is a new challenge, Counting Your Carbon Footprint, was the title of today. And actually, I didn't know this, but I'd not put it in a presentation before, and I thought, actually, I better put this out there, because somebody in this room might sort of tell me it if I don't put it out. So, yeah, I mean, the term carbon footprint, I don't know whether people have come across this before, was actually popularised by BP many, many moons ago. And they actually hired a marketing company, it's a bit like the whole tobacco thing, to try and come up with this concept. It was already created, the idea of carbon footprint was created, but they basically wanted to put the problem of carbon on us and off themselves. Not daft, are they? So yes, that is the background. That's really where it became a popular term, and it was BP that made it popular. But as one of the group at work came back to me the other day to say, the reason we're talking about it today is obviously nothing to do with, you know, avoiding fossil fuels. It's because we've got a real serious problem now. You know, if we don't do something about climate change, we've got real issues. And all of us can do something, whether it's voting to make politicians do something, whether it's campaigning. And you can campaign sat at home. You know, it could just be that online petition that tells your MP, whoever that might be in Chester next, tells your MP, you know, that you want them to do something. So what's a carbon footprint? So just in case, what I try and do whenever I do any training is just make sure that we've got this sort of, everybody's got a bit of information, and some of you might know loads and loads about it, but it's really just about greenhouse gases. There's loads of different types of greenhouse gases, methane. I can remember my first campaign when I came to Chester and became part of Friends of the Earth was about methane and cows, and they wanted me to dress up as a cow, and that's one thing I refused to do. It took a long time before I eventually dressed as a bee. I've done a lot of dressing up as a bee over the years, but I refused to dress up as a cow and talk about methane and about cow burps. Many moons ago, stood outside the town hall in Chester. So there's lots of different things, and we call them all CO2. See that little E? So it's just CO2 equivalent. Everything's converted into a CO2 equivalent. So carbon literacy, you mentioned earlier. So carbon literacy was something that came from a couple of people in Manchester that were very aware that, you know, we needed to educate ourselves on climate change issues, and this goes back years ago. I think it worked really well in Manchester because they've got that mayoral structure over there. So they created the Carbon Literacy Project, and it's really taken off. I became a trainer in 2018 to train the staff in work. We're just about to get another 32 people carbon literate trained. And carbon literacy training is a day's worth of training on climate change and carbon footprint, basically. So our team at work have had to go a whole day listening to me, which I know they loved. And then they get signed off, and then they'll get a certificate if they pass the certification process. And when I did my trainer training, they used the WWF calculator, which then, in 2018, was very basic. You could go on it and to work out what your carbon footprint was that day, and that was about all it did, really. And in lockdown, again, going back to, it was World Environment Day. I think I spent 3 weeks putting what ended up being 3 days worth of talks together. And I came across a lady called Jo Hand, and her husband had created this project called Geeky, again, because she wanted to share the issues about climate change with a wider audience. And she came and did a talk, which was brilliant. And then I started to link Geeky with what I did in carbon literacy work. So basically what Geeky is trying to do is trying to give people an interactive way to be more sustainable. So sustainable life, sustainable living, they just fitted really well in what we're about at Eco Communities. So 3/4 of the global greenhouse emissions are actually from us as individuals. So we do all need to play the part. It's no longer a BP greenwash project. It is about us all trying to do something. And this is just this is 2018. Just get a bit of coffee. So this was the data in 2018, and this is about year on year on emissions. So you can see a lot of those are orange, which means in 2018 they were creating more emissions. And the only saving grace, I've only found this actually today, went looking for it, was this one. What that means is all of that grey coloured and the bluey colour means these are countries that have reduced their emissions. So there are things happening out there. I don't think we're going far enough, but actually countries are starting to reduce their emissions. So we created a project, Carbon Footprint Friends. So the thing I must admit I should have probably asked before today's talk, and I didn't. Carbon Footprint Friends, we have our own account as Eco Communities. And really today what I want you to do is, my aim of today really is that you go home and go, I've listened to all those things Helen has said, but I like the idea of logging into this. You can just do it on a computer. It's not a smartphone app or anything like that. It's just a computer app, and you can key things on. So if you use a computer, you can do this. It's really, really easy. This is what I loved about it, the fact it was so easy. And this is our little thing at the moment. We've not got a huge number of people on it at the moment. I must admit, because we're doing so many different things, the plastic-free stuff sort of taken a little bit of the work that we've been doing recently. But this is just our little our board that we've got, and I have one for work as well. And that's really showing that the people that are working on it at the moment, what we've reduced in carbon emissions, so 31,000 kilograms, and the amount of water we've all saved, the less land needed, so that would be to do with eating a different diet, so less land needed to graze cattle, and how much less plastic we've used. And it will give you a footprint. And it also gives us a climate clock. And what that's basically saying is, if everybody lived like the people that are in this Eco Community account at the moment, we're going to run out of 5 years and 9 months is basically when basically the world stops, which is a little bit of a worry. That's because they're not doing well enough on our account at the moment. And this all goes back to the Paris Agreement, where we need to stop global warming by 1.5 degrees, more than that 1.5, and that's still bad, 1.5 degrees. And it works out then, if we carry on doing what we're doing now, we carry on living like we are, when will we hit that tipping point where there's a problem? And this is my one. And you must admit, I've put my recent cruise in my work one. I've not put it in this one. So mine looks a little bit worse than this now. But it was saying, if everybody lived like me, we've got 13 years. So obviously I'm doing something better than the mass of people that are in eco communities. So I've managed to get my till 13 years, but it's not really helping much if nobody else does anything. And that's just some of my data. What I've saved in the last 12 months by changing what I do. So, travel. On the left is a really great fact that actually I've got through Geeky. So the first electric car was made in 1870. And actually it was weird when I was doing this presentation. I thought, I haven't looked this up before. I'm a bit of a sort of perhaps a researcher, so I like to find out some facts about something. I go, oh, I'm going to find a bit more about that. So I'll go off and read a little bit. So I actually found that it was about, by 1900s, electric cars were actually doing really, really well and account for about 1/3 of vehicles on roads in the US. And you sort of go, what happened? Why are we not, why are we now in the position we're in with the fossil fuel industry? We started so well. And it was actually the Model T, which I believe, having done some finding, that is a Model T. If anybody wants to prove me wrong, that's fine. It took a while to find a picture of what was a Model T. Basically, Henry Ford created the Ford Model T, and it was down to price. So basically, by 1912, a gasoline car cost $650. The electric car was $1,750. A little bit like it is today. It's still a lot more expensive to buy an electric car. But that was it. That was the death of the electric car, really. And also, there were some facts in there about the electric what's it called? Where you thingy the car. Everybody had to get to the front of the car and crank. Yeah, and the electric version was created soon after, which obviously developed petrol cars more again. Okay, so anybody who in the room's got an electric car? Okay. A couple of people. Yeah. They are not cheap. They are not cheap. So what can the rest of us do? Well, you could, like I have done, is I've given up my car. So before March of this year, I lived out in Broughton. We'd lived there for years and years and years. And when we were looking to move, as my son left home, the one thing I said to my husband was, I need to be near a train station. It is ridiculous that I used to drive to Helsby to get on the train to Manchester, which is where the business is based. I need to be near a train station, and that was part of our decision on where we live next. So we've moved to Hoole. I can walk to the train station in 20 minutes. I do get a little bit cranky when it's raining, I must admit. I've given up my car. I always thought I would end up with an electric car. But even with the hubby's looking at electric cars already. Driving at 50 miles an hour is actually 25% And the main thing that I sort of think about often is that when you're sort of on a road, a dual carriageway, or any road, to be honest, the A55 is the one that I'm thinking about in my mind, you'll see people where you'll see the brake lights are going a lot. So you put like this flashing red light in front of you. And that's somebody who is either aggressively driving, so they're accelerating, getting too close to the car in front, having to slow down, or perhaps just a poor driver. But actually, if you use your accelerator by taking your foot off the accelerator and slowing, that's actually much, much more energy efficient than the constant driving up to something, brake, driving up to something, brake. Don't idle your car. I'm hoping that none of us do in this room. But, you know, not that long ago, I was involved in a campaign which was looking at parents idling outside school gates. I believe from one of my team at work that it's actually banned now in Scotland, not in England. And there's a huge amount of emissions that come from sitting and parking and idling your cars. It's obviously not good for children's health. And I was sort of trying to think about it. It's probably more likely to be perhaps when they're picking children up. So children that might be a little bit older that can walk to the car. But actually any time, you might just be stopped and, you know, your partner's nipped into a shop, and you might be leaving the engine running. Unless you've got one of those cars, ours does sort of turn itself off. Unless you've got one of those ones that turns itself off, it's better to turn your engine off. That's much better from energy efficiency. Well, from energy efficiency, from carbon footprint, and also cost as well. And obviously now petrol, diesel's costing so much money. We all want to try and save money, and some of these tips will help you save money as well. This is not so great, I don't think, in Chester, but, you know, city centres, I do know I've got clients all over the UK, and a lot of them are in hotspots, and there's odd places where you do need to, I have to drive to. It takes me a day to get there on public transport. But I know some places have got quite good park and ride systems. I know Oxford's quite a good one, and then they've got a scheme where if you then carry on the road, you know, if you're if you've got lots of people in your car, you can go in a different lane. They still do that now, not being down there for a long, long time. Cycling or walking, I know obviously for you know, health reasons may not be able to walk short distances, and that's completely understandable. But some of us could, I try and do, walk more now as well. And then if you are in a lucky position to change your car, you know, could you change it for an electric version? So this is just the difference between the SUV type car and an electric car in carbon. So an SUV, those big cars, which I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm trying to think back. When did it seem normal for everybody need to have a huge car, even though all they've got is 2 children and a dog? So you now need a pickup truck or an SUV to drive your children to school, and these big, even bigger sort of things with the big truck on the back. You're sort of thinking, what do they do for a living? Oh, right, yeah, perhaps, you know, I'm not quite sure why there's all this space to throw stuff in the boot. So, I mean, those are even worse, those big pickup type trucks. But an SUV is 35 kilograms of CO2. I haven't got my trusty How Bad Are Bananas book with me today, so if anybody asks me any questions, I can't look it up. 35 grams of CO2. Electric car is 8.8. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, it's 100 miles. Sorry. It's all right, no, my fault. I should have read that bit out. Yeah. And an electric car, 8.8. And if you are lucky enough to have solar panels, anybody here got solar panels? Well done. So I know Sue's not here. I know Sue I know she lives around the corner. 1 kilogram. So, you know, I say they are really expensive. You know, I completely get it. I don't have one myself. But if you are in that position that you're looking to change car, Now, petrol and diesel cars are going to be banned from production in the future. So it will be that your grandchildren probably will likely only drive, or your great-grandchildren may only drive electric cars going forward as well. So what about at home? Again, the first heat pump was built in 1855, but yet we all then went on to gas central heating. And actually, Geeky's stats also confirmed that heat pumps could provide 90% of the heating need within the UK. So actually, you know, in theory, you know, we could all end up with heat pumps. Again, you know, Helen C is having one fitted at the moment. It'd be interesting to see how she gets on. I do know lots of people that have had heat pumps fitted, and there are some grants around, but they're very expensive. And unless I'm proved otherwise, I'm assuming there's going to be a bit of mess in your house.
I'll tell you a story about it at the end.
Good. So, you know, okay. But the thing that isn't on there is that... I think perhaps that becomes the campaign, really, doesn't it? It really goes to, you know, asking the housing association, what are they doing to make their properties more energy efficient? They will be looking at it, because another thing that I'm doing training at the moment is something called net zero, which is about businesses. And so all businesses have got to put together net zero plans. So housing associations probably will be part of that. And to be fair to housing associations, it was a housing association that, but over in Manchester. So perhaps we need to get the... So they're doing loads of work over in Manchester, perhaps not so much going on around here. So I think it is probably the first step is ask them, what are they doing? And I'm fairly sure they're going to realise at some point, if they've not already, that they're going to have to start looking at ways of making their properties not just more energy efficient, but actually looking at the CO2 emissions as well, and towards this aim of net zero. Who's had the heating on in the last month or so? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you know, absolutely get it. My mother-in-law would hate to come, well, she does hate, we do tend to put it on a week before she visits, you know. She likes the house warm, and again, you know, if you know, from a health point of view, some of you might need to make sure you've got warmth. Ours has not gone on yet. I always said the 1st of November. I think he's forgotten that we're actually there now. But I've always said it's not going on until the 1st of November. The downside now is that we've moved, and he knows how this new heating works. He never knew how the whole heating system worked. He just used to send me up to look at it. But our thermostat is down on, I think, when it's on, it's down quite low. So it's got to be lower than 18 degrees for it to click on, which is I know it's probably a lot lower than most of you've got. He does work underneath a blanket in the front room on a regular basis. I've got a little office at the bottom of the garden, which, so long as there's some sun, it's like a greenhouse. So far so good. It's generally been quite warm in there. But, yeah.
I've got solar panels, and now, at the moment, I have a 400-watt heater on in my lounge, which doesn't cost me anything because it's a very sunny day, and it wants
Your house.
quite
Fantastic. You know, I would love, I'm fighting at home, because I would love to get some solar panels on my house, on this house. Yes, I'm just fighting that campaign at the moment. But yeah, well done, that's fantastic. But, you know, could you turn it down by 1 degree? So if you have it set at 22, could you put it to 21? If you have it set at 21, could you set it down to 20? Because that will save you 300 kilograms of CO2. So it's quite a lot. So have a look at these things.
No, time's fine.
All right.
But could we save questions for the end? The reason is nothing to do with Helen, she's happy. The people online can't hear your questions. And there are quite quite a few people online. At the end, the microphone and so the people online will be able to hear.
And the deaf people can't hear.
Thanks, Helen.
All right, no, that's fine. Shorter showers. I think this probably is, this one is aimed really at the teenage 20-odd-year-old market where they seem to go in the shower forever and ever. But again, you know, do you ever think about how long you're in the shower for? Yes, some nods, that's brilliant. Yeah, but I know that is not, if you do have visitors to your house, check out how long they might stay. Grandkids and great-grandkids, listen to them and remind them that they need to spend less time in the shower for water as well as the energy that's needed. Ditch the tumble dryer, something that I did, I can't remember, I probably not had a tumble dryer for 20 years, I think. So there are loads, obviously, different ways to heat. I did watch my lovely neighbour put the washing out on Sunday and think, gosh, you're being very optimistic, and then it threw it down and she was obviously then rushed out to bring it back in again. But no, we've not had a tumble dryer for a long, long time. There were times when we realised that Matthew's school uniform hadn't been washed, that we wished we had one, but we've just not had one. So, you know, just one of those things to think about. They're really, really energy zapping tumble dryers. Lower the temperature of washing. I've eventually managed to suss this one out with the other half, that you do not need to wash everything on 60 degrees. But, and again, you know, most washing powders these days are aimed to be used at 40 degrees. So I don't know what temperature you put your washing machine on, but have a think. You might find every now and then you might need to do a hot wash to give it a good old boil through to get rid of the smell. But as a general rule, and that would something like your towels, if you just every now and then, if you want to put your towels on a hotter wash, is a good idea. But other than that, I've managed to suss him out to get him down to the 40 degree or 30 degree wash. The other one, which I don't think I've got a slide for, is dishwasher. This is where I think about the things when it comes to the debates I have at home. So the other one is the dishwasher, and I had this debate in work as well. The eco setting, yes, it might take 5 hours, but it's not eco just to trick you. It says eco setting for a reason, because actually it uses a lot less energy than it does on any of those other washes. So again, have a think, make sure it's set. So again, I've sussed out, and it's taken me a long time to get that one sussed at home. But again, at work, we had lots of debates about that at work, about it taking a long time. So dishwasher's another one to think about. And for anybody out there that is thinking or was going to ask me at the end about hand washing and dishwashers, it has been proven that dishwasher is more environmentally friendly and uses a lot less washing, a lot less water than hand washing your pots. Now, if you have a cup and a plate a day, then obviously it's going to take you a long time to fill up your dishwasher. But actually, as a general rule, it's a lot better to use a dishwasher. It uses a lot less water in there as well. So there you are. So there's a point to go home with. This is the debate I have with my mother. She doesn't want... So what about food? So we've gone through things at home, and there's loads. There's a couple, actually, that I've not done slides for that I'm just thinking about now. So one of the things that when I listened to I went through my geeky ages ago when we were in lockdown, it was pan lids. And it was obviously something that I was aware of at some point. I actually bought, when I needed new pans, I didn't just go out and buy new pans. I needed new pans, and I bought ones with glass lids. And ultimately, I probably used them for years and years and years and years. And then at some point, the lids just stayed in the drawer and didn't used to come out of the drawer. And then one of the things in geeky is make sure you put a lid on your pan, because obviously that keeps the heat in. And again, it's a lot less energy. And I think the reason perhaps I stopped was that boiling over problem, that you've got to, I'm just obviously not, I've gone off me doing something and my pan's boiling over. But, if you do keep an eye on your pans, like I do try and do a bit more regularly now, then it's much better to put the lid on your pan. One on my list that I've still not done anything about because we were moving and then it's been, warm weather, is radiator reflectors. So you can, and they're not expensive. You put them down the back of your radiators. They're silver reflectors. And what they then do is bounce the heat back into the room rather than what happens generally is just the wall soaks up all that radiator heat. So you can get really inexpensive radiator reflectors off the bat. So that's on my to list, actually, which I really need to start thinking about now if we are going to start putting the heating on any time soon when it gets freezing cold in our house, that he insists on the heating. So, but there's absolutely loads of tips and ideas in Geeky, and they don't need to be the solar panel, the car. There's loads of really great, easy, doable things that you go, and like I did with the pan lids, why did I stop doing that? Microwave is a much better way to cook your food than on the hob. I think I've grown up in that era of, a microwave's healthy, and that I'm sort of use it, but for beans and not for other things. And you think, okay, perhaps I should use the microwave more rather than sticking a pan on the hob. But food is another huge, huge problem. About a third of all the world's food goes to waste. So we're all worrying about money, how much things are costing. But actually, we waste so much food. And again, it might not be you in the room, but have you ever had that conversation with your children and your grandchildren? Because that's almost, we do need that filter down concept. You might, if you're sat here going, no, I don't do any of that, I don't do that. Is there somebody else out there that might? And there, you can tell people great ideas and tips without being preachy. You can just say, you know what, I've just been listening to this person. She was telling me, oh, yeah, I do that. Do you do it? Because then it just becomes a conversation. And there's a great app on there, which I think's in the magazine, called, there's two actually, Olio's one, so I became the Olio rep in Chester, which I didn't do a very good job at years and years ago. So Olio is an app where if you've got, perhaps you're going on a holiday and you've got some food that's going to go out of date while you're away and you're wanting to get it used, you can go on there, say you've got this food, and people come and get it off you. They do all sorts of other things on it these days as well. So that's a food waste app. The other one is Too Good To Go, which is the little thing on the bottom right. Too Good To Go, there's loads of business set up in Chester that are part of Too Good To Go. I know Bear Bakery is, which is a company that we do quite a lot of links with. Some of the big ones are, so some of the one shops are on it. But then there are some more niche. So Hull, fruit and veg, they don't come up very often, but sometimes there's cheap veg boxes on there from Hull Food Market. And that one is businesses saying, I've got something that isn't going to last till tomorrow. Greggs is on there. And you can get these cheap bags of food. So again, these are all things that are trying to help with food waste. And this is just a scary fact that was one of the things that I've used in social media. 800 million people go to bed hungry every night around the world. Yeah, and I still do it. There's still food goes in my food recycling, and it's not all a banana skin. There are things that, we end up, I've eaten it for 3 days and I've cooked too much and I don't want it for a fourth day, and I did put it in the freezer because I thought I was going to have it, and then I've not been in, so now it's been in there 2 days. I think, probably not great now. So, I'm as guilty as everybody else. Half of the food waste takes place in our homes. So it is just about, for me, portion control, being better, trying to make sure I remember when I'm not going to be in, and therefore freezing things. So I'm not perfect, because I spend my day just rushing around doing one thing after another, that, I'm never home long enough to plan, but, go through phases. So we waste about 9.5 million tonnes of food a year. There's been some great campaigns over the years. And again, this is what I'm saying. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to be out there with a placard. It could just be things you've done from home or online. The Hugh Fernie Whittingstall campaign was a fantastic one about wonky veg. you know, and these things start off with a petition, you sign the petition, yeah, you might get a few back that you don't necessarily want, but you sign a petition, that gets big, and then things start to happen. And there's lots of things from a parliamentary point of view as well that then go up in Parliament. So all these things do help. You know, we're all worrying about money. You know, the average UK family throws 22% of their weekly shop in the bin. You know, £730 a year potentially gets bought and put in the bin. So another step on geeky in there is about trying to source food from within 50 miles of your home. You know, and the thing as well that I always think back to is that, you know, what we do now, and I talk about this a lot in the carbon literacy work that I do, is that we want certain foods and we want them 12 months of the year. Good, well done, well done. You know, people will want strawberries for Christmas. You know, although I did look, I told everybody at work the other day that if you go in a shop and see British strawberries, they'll have been flown in, which is so bad. And I did see some British strawberries, but they must have been grown in a hot room at this time of year. They must have been. So again, the carbon footprint will still be really high. You know, we want things. We need to get back to local and seasonal, which is, I know that's how you've all thought about it, but it's about spreading that message out. Other things as well. So, do you all feel that you understand enough about climate change? Everybody's different, everybody's come from a different background. You know, could you find out a bit more? That could be a whole new talk for somebody to come and do for you. Again, these are just some more sort of geeky steps, you know, planting pollinator-friendly flowers. So there's lots of things in it that are nice things to do. So it's not all about stopping doing things and putting your pan lids on, you know, and it'll give you all the reasons and the benefits about doing that. And I'm sure, again, you know, you're all environmentally aware of why we need to plant pollinator-friendly flowers. Just was a nice picture. Try a zero waste shop. Has anybody ever been into Just Footprints? Good, yeah, that's Debbie's shop. The benefit of using a shop like that is that, first of all, you'll know, because she's certified as being sustainable palm oil with Chester Zoo, but you also know that there's not all of that plastic that's going to come with the packaging, because you can either go in there and come away with a paper bag, or go in there with your own pots and get it filled up. And that actually reduces your carbon footprint of your food hugely, hugely downwards, because there's none of that unnecessary packaging. So brilliant for those that have. She's shut now until she opens in the market on the 5th. That's this Friday, isn't it? Oh my gosh. See what happens in my world. Everything's just a blur of doing stuff. And a bit about, you know, emails, because this obviously applies quite a lot in a work environment that I'm still in. You know, it's so easy just to go delete to those emails that come in. Has anybody ever gone to the bottom and find a button that says unsubscribe? You are much better at making it go away forever than just deleting it. 17 billion pieces of junk mail come into our inboxes every year. Sometimes I do subscribe and then decide I don't want it. I'll just go to that one actually. So a spam email is 0.3 grams of CO2, but there's zillions of those being sent. And I'm saying if there's a company that's sending one a month to you, because at some point historically you did sign up or you went in a shop and it unwittingly gave them your email address, they could be sending you one every month. And if all you do is delete it, when actually realistically you didn't really want it, that's 12 emails. You know, you could just go, actually, I'm not interested in this company anymore. I'm just going to go to the bottom and find the delete button, the unsubscribe button. It's not always easy to find, from my experience, but it's worth doing. Gives you a good sense of achievement as well. A general email is 4 grams of CO2. Now, the interesting one, and again, in your environment, that you probably can't get away from this, but in a business environment, what we used to do at work is we work on a server. It's a bit like you're having a computer, And we all have access to this same system. But what we used to do was send an email to Bill over there, and then we'd attach a document that's on this system that we've all got access to. And that's 50 grams of CO2. As soon as you send an email and you attach a document, a Word document, whatever it is, and send it somewhere, the carbon footprint of that email goes through the roof. And it's taking me since 2018 to get people at work to go, oh, yes, yeah, I can just tell you where it is, don't I? I can just tell you it's in folder A. It's in folder A, Helen, this document that you need to read. Right, I won't attach it. But again, just think about that sort of thing. You know, some of you might be used to using cloud folders and all those sorts of things these days. But this was something, again, from the research that I did ages ago. A day's worth of emails in, you know, like a business type environment is 1.652 grams of CO2. Sorry, a day's worth. A year's worth of emails is equivalent to 0.6 tons of CO2. Now, an email is much better than, I'm afraid, putting something in the post. Again, I'm not telling you not to post anything to anybody ever again. You know, I've got a printed magazine here. You know, so, you know, there are still reasons, and it's nice to sometimes get a postcard or something through the, you know, what the postman going to do if we don't send anything anymore. But it's about really thinking about the zillions and zillions of emails we get that we don't really need. A person in India, their whole carbon footprint is 1.5 tons of CO2 a year. So it only takes 2.5 of us at the business where I'm a partner to be sending emails around to be using as much carbon footprint as somebody in India. It just makes you think of what we're doing sometimes. But an email only uses 1.7% of the energy as to send something in the post. So, you know, if there is something, you know, and I think I get the impression that you are quite an online. I've heard you talking about, we did this voting and we did this Google form. So it sounds like you're using all of those tools. And I think the thing as well is that, you know, that period over COVID has meant that often we've had to try those new ways of managing things and online meetings and those sorts of things. Some other really little tips. Buy fair trade. Always great, because again, these are not just necessarily about carbon footprint, these are about what's good for climate and the environment. We know by fair trade, you know, that means that workers' rights, they've got safer working conditions, and then we know they're going to get a better pay. And obviously there's some great places you can get fair trade goods in Chester. And one thing that I've been trying to be a lot better of, and there's loads of geeky steps about fashion, only 1% of fashion ever gets recycled. So again, you know, I was out in Chester the other day and I was looking at all these bags that look different. You know, I was like, oh, there's zillions of these paper bags. What store's that? And Primark have changed their paper bag. I hadn't realised. And they were all Primark bags. And, you know, what we've got there is, you know, you can buy a t-shirt for such a low price that people think, well, I'll wear it once and that's it. You know, we need to change that mindset of our families to not think of fashion as being something you just wear once and throw away, because only 1% of textiles is being recycled, which is really bad, really low and really bad. Buy second-hand. Charity shops are definitely, you know, we're coming out lockdown and you can actually get to a charity shop again. But buying second-hand is really great. You know, we've not done as much this year, but we try and do a lot of work around, you know, Halloween and, you know, do you need to go and buy that new £10 Halloween costume for a child, or could you make something at home? You know, it takes generally about 10 kilograms of carbon to make an outfit. And jeans are really high. Jeans are really carbon intensive. But, you know, they were originally made as hard-wearing work clothes that would have been worn and worn and worn and worn. And obviously what happens these days is, I can say it because I've had a teenage son, they just leave everything that they've worn on the floor, including the damp towel, so therefore everything then ends up in the washing after even if they've just tried it on and didn't wear it, because it just ended up on the floor. He's getting better now he does his own washing, I must admit. And that's just some more links to me. Now, as I say, I didn't want to give you, War and Peace today, because I really want you to go off and try and do some of this on Geeky. The thing I just need to double check, and I can get the link round to everybody, is the link will be in here, but also is you could actually have your own group inside our account, which means that we could know what your carbon footprint is as u3a, if that's something you wanted to do. So take one of these from the back. Obviously, we're still going to do questions. There's loads of information in here. There's a really great guy that we know called Mark Thompson, who's created a website, which, again, we do a newsletter, which we're going to be publishing some of his hints and tips. But some of the food oleos in there that we mentioned earlier. There's stuff in here about carbon footprint in here. And then there's some info in here about his website. He is retired, and basically what he still does is research different topics. And it was, I just read his article on, apparently, in social media has a real role to play in as people getting the wrong idea about things. Because, I missed it, but apparently there was something going around on social media recently that a really great eco tip is to warm your room with candles, apparently. And I must admit, like you all laughed. You all laughed. I thought, surely not. Anyway, he was being interviewed on the radio and was sort of, explaining that myth and all the figures into it. And as I'm doing my training in work and, telling this story, I expected a similar response, only to get one of the team went, perhaps I'll stop doing that then. So people do get sucked into this idea that, things are a good thing to do without any of the knowledge. So he's done quite a lot of work recently. Actually, I posed a question because I have one of these heated airers. I want to say no tumble dryer, but I have a Lakeland area that's heated bars. So he's done some research on that. I've not managed to read it yet because I've just been so busy. So he's done some research on that recently, but he does loads and loads of research on different things. If you're ever wondering, he's the geeky sort of person that will go off and do that sort of research. So my wish is that you'll all subscribe to Geeky for me and start counting your carbon footprint. By all means, get in touch with me. I love chatting to people. Send me your thoughts, your questions. We're going to do some questions now. But if you get to a stage on it that you go, I want to tell Helen I've done something. I love stories because we use social media quite a lot. And if you want to get hold of our newsletters as well, but please do take one of these with you. And my aim of that is take more than one if you want, actually. I just put a bundle because they were easier to carry. Take one for you, one for somebody else. Because the more we get people to read this sort of content, the more we are going to be able to change the world that we're leaving for our grandkids and great-grandkids in the future as well. So I hope people I saw a book open here with some tips being written down, which is good to see. She could just be writing down a shopping list. I have no idea. But from my side, it all was good. So, yeah, I'm quite happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
I will have to explain to Helen that I am wearing jeans, but they are only the third pair I've ever owned, and I'm 79.
Well done.
So I plan to wear them till I die. So I hope that's acceptable.
That sounds good to me.
Right. Questions and comments. Now can be heard.
I'm going to go to the back because you did have your. I was ignoring you because I've been told not to.
Yeah, go on.
A website called what was it called? I'm trying to think now. My brain's gone.
Because we made you wait so long.
It's change.org, And they have petitions.
Yes.
And I don't know whether everybody's heard of it. And you can start a petition online and get people to help, you know, these companies sort of that are gas guzzling, stop polluting the D and everything like that. And I think that's a good idea, www.change.org.
You know, I can't more strongly say, I know, you know, you sort of, and my mum said the same thing to me, like, oh, I did that thing you told me to do, and now I'm getting loads of emails, Helen.
Yeah.
And I do get that, but actually, you know, petitions have been shown to create change. You do not have to be out there, you don't have to have a placard, you can do things from home and online. So definitely. So there was some, I can't remember where all the hands were. I'll let you just, you do, it's probably easier if you pick the hands.
I'll keep my carbon footprint down by keeping warm by one around. So is somebody around here? Sorry, Julie.
Hi Helen, thanks very much. So my question is about our new recycling bins, which I think, and maybe people in this room can help me, we can't anymore recycle textiles. I'm wondering why that is. I'm wondering if it's because people are using it inappropriately for perfectly good clothing. I don't know what happened to it previously, but all I know is that's not happening now. So the very old holy t-shirt I was wearing in bed last night, when I got up this morning, I realised that it's actually wider than it is long, and that's why my lower back was cold in the night, and I thought, I need to throw this out.
Okay.
Along with holy socks. That's all we ever used to put in it. But I can't. What am I going to do with those old textiles now?
It's funny because I was in Flintshire before, and another part of the reason I moved was because when with the devolution, cross-border campaigning just became really difficult. So I was just campaigning really in Chester, but didn't live in Chester. So I know that situation because, you know, I couldn't in Flintshire. I don't know the reason why they've stopped. I would guess a lot of it's to do with this. They've got a new contract now. It's moved over, hasn't it? I mean, it's sort of been what they call cheapie, so it's been all the staff have moved over, and it's council owned now. But you can take it to the recycling plant. So what I found the other day, because this all been a big debate online before I moved, and I don't know whether people realise that you could have put it in your recycling, to be honest, in Cheshire. But actually they've got some really great big bins. It can just be charity clothes, or it can be old textiles. Bumpers Lane, it's called, is it Bumpers Lane? Yeah. Bumpers Lane, on the right-hand side, the very last thing on the right-hand side is all your textiles. So keep saving it, and if you're going down there with something else, stick it in.
One of the things that I learnt recently from my granddaughter, one's always learning things from one's grandchildren, but you can now buy, where she is a student in Leeds, you can now buy clothing from a charity shop by the pound in a black bag. You merely take a black bag, but at least I suppose it's being reused. I mean...
Yeah.
Okay, so might I ask a question as well? A quick survey. How many people have come here today anything other than a car? Okay, okay. Yeah, that's
brilliant.
Very good, very good.
Well done.
I drove half. That counts. So this lady.
I have two questions. One is, you didn't mention travel by bus.
No, because what I'm trying to focus on there is the carbon footprint of the bad things, the things that we do the most of. Obviously, what we're trying to say to you is, if you want to look at alternative travel ways, then the ways to be doing that is going to be public transport, whether that's bus, train, or, people in Manchester, tram, because that's sharing it. So it's much better to be using a bus than using your car.
Right, thank you. Right. The other question was to do with soft plastic. My local co-op has a small little bin where you can collect your soft plastic and put it in there, and I was doing that. But then I read an article in my newspaper which said that because the places where we put our rubber, where the rubbish are taken to, I've forgotten, I can't remember things sometimes, that they are, you know, it doesn't sink into the ground, and they're made in such a way that you can just put your soft plastic in the black bin, and you know, it just goes with the general rubbish.
So if you put your plastic in your black bin, so what we want really, we want a circular type economy. So what we want to do is we want to either use, so I've seen lots of these today, which is brilliant. If you want to use a cup that's reusable, not a cup that you have to throw away, and you really want to try and buy things without plastic as much as possible.
That's very hard.
Yeah. If you do have soft plastic, Co-op do get that recycled. They've made a commitment, they're great Co-op, so that does get recycled into something else. So it goes in the bin.
What about this article I read? And it was a well-written article.
Without seeing the article, if you put it in your black bin, so your rubbish bin,
yes,
it's going to, in Cheshire West, it's going to be incinerated. So it's going off to the incinerator.
Oh,
so it's not going to be reused. Yeah. So Co-op are going to reuse it, going to recycle it, put it in your black bin. It's going to get incinerated. Lots of hands. The lady in the green.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. I've tried not to be too self-righteous sitting here, but a couple of, first of all, a point. If you have an older house with chimneys that aren't capped, you can buy balloons that will inflate and stop all that hot air going up your chimney. So that's a good point.
Thank you. Yeah, that's probably another geeky step.
Yes.
There's so many in there that I couldn't, brilliant.
One of the blessings of COVID for me was that my son bought his own house. And it required him replacing his gas boiler. You're not doing that, darling, says Mummy. We shouldn't be putting gas boilers in. So he has installed an air source heat pump. That has cost me an awful lot of money. And it has taken him 8 months from start to finish to do that. He's living on his own. He could do that. But how many terraced houses do we have in Chester? How are we going to convert them away from gas central heating? Nobody seems to be wanting to address that problem.
There is a trial. I mean, we could probably stay here for ages going on about all the different topics that are going on. There is a trial probably going to come to Cheshire West, and that is looking at, and I don't want to get into a debate about hydrogen, but that is to look at putting hydrogen through the gas pipes. So there's loads, I mean, I think basically there's loads of things going on, and the solution for the whole of the UK might not be ground source heat pumps, but they might get developed and get better. Ground source won't work. Yeah. Air source. Sorry, yeah. So but there might be developments in anything, but they are looking at loads and loads of different things. I've got a gas central heating boiler in the house I'm in. Had we got the house that we were first going to buy that fell through, that needed loads of work, I probably would have been in a position to try to put one in. And a friend who's having one installed now, he's having an extension. So again, but I don't really like the idea of completely trashing what is a very nice house. So I completely get what you're saying, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think this will have to be our last question, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
Thank you. My question is about heat pumps. I've got a son who's a plumber, and obviously he puts in gas boilers. And I was talking to him one day, and I said, what's the feedback on heat pumps? And he said, oh, dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Never, never get one. So I said, why, what's wrong? He said, well, you know, they don't warm the house. They're hopeless. They draw the cold air out. I think they use some gas or something to heat them up. I think gas is involved in them.
I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because there is a lot of research out there about the benefits of ground source and air heat pumps.
Yeah, well then what I did was I knew that there's a couple in our walking group who always have the latest everything, and I knew they had a new electric car, which they praised. But then I said to the guy, well, how's your heat pump? How does that work? Bloody awful, he said. House is always freezing. He said, I said, well, do you regret getting it in? He said, well, the wife wanted it in, you know, because it's, you know, helps the environment, this, that and the other. I said, so you never get warm? He said, no, it's always cold. So I just wondered if anyone here had a heat pump heater and what they thought of it.
We've got to wind down now because we're running out of time in the hall. In answer to that question, does anyone have a heat pump they're happy with?
Oh, sorry. There is no gas on the premises at all now. And it is actually costing him a lot less than the year before. And admittedly, he's had to insulate his house properly.
We should be doing that first anyway. So.
Well, yes, but we've got to embrace other technologies. And I wish, well, I won't say the word vested interest in plumbers, but yes, you know. Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Could you pass the microphone to Gwen, please? I'd just like to ask Gwen to say a few words.
I think I'm speaking for everyone when I say that thank you very much, Helen, for providing such an accessible and interesting talk. Peter and I have, over the years, felt quite virtuous because we walk a lot. We've cut down the number of flights we make. We don't eat beef unless someone else buys it for us. You know.
Yeah, we didn't. I've not even really done loads about meat consumption, but there is loads on Geek if you go to look at.
But all of those things. But Helen, you've brought so many other things together, and I think you've made us all think. So a very, very big thank you.
So thank you so much. So don't forget, the magazines are just the very back row on the chair. Please take one. If you want to take two, you've got a friend you want to give one to, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I will get the link over to get people on as well. Thank you so much, everybody.